Greetings, vinyl community. Today, as I record this, is Thanksgiving Day. Yesterday was the 77th anniversary of the birth of Jimi Hendrix. So, in continuation of my series of albums that I've owned for 50 years, this is my original 50-year-old copy of Jimi Hendrix's third album, Electric Ladyland. The last album by the Jimi Hendrix Experience and the last studio album released during Jimi's lifetime. It was released in October 1968, recorded over the period of about a year. It went to number one in the United States in November of 1968. And as a point of trivia, the album that was number one both before and after Electric Ladyland was Cheap Thrills by Big Brother and the Holding Company, of course featuring Janis Joplin, whose fate was historically and tragically entwined with Jimi's, as they both died within weeks of each other at a tragically young age. This, of course, is the American edition of the album. I've always loved this cover. I've described the image of Jimi on the front as being sculpted out of fire. And the album makes references to fire. The album has explicit references to water. There is spacey, floating music of the air, and there's also very driving, earthy blues and rock and roll on this album. So you're very well covered for the classical elements. Pretty much everyone knows the story of the original release being in the cover with the nude ladies, which Hendrix is said not to have approved of. There's just something wrong about this cover. It's dark and dingy looking. It's hard not to make all these lovely ladies look sexy, but they don't here. They just look kind of grubby. Much better on the inside with a very spacey picture of Jimi sort of emerging from the green mist. Not a purple haze, but a green mist. This is actually a German copy of the album from the box set that was released in the 80s in Germany. This CD edition, deluxe expanded edition that came out last year, uses the cover that was allegedly Jimi Hendrix's choice for the cover image. I'm not convinced that this is actually the frame that he really wanted. It looks kind of murky itself. On the inside of the American album, there is a picture from the same sessions in New York City Central Park with Jimi giving a big smile, and I feel like this is actually the picture he wanted. Also not sure if these pictures were taken in color, because this is obviously a colorized version of a black and white photo. And this is actually my copy that I got for Christmas 1969 from my Aunt Ellen and Uncle Dutch, who also gave me that Simon and Garfunkel Bookends album that I showed earlier. They referred to this one as that Electric Ladybug album. The album kicks off with And the Gods Made Love, the original title for which was At Last the Beginning. And this is described as a 90-second sound portrait of the heavens. I think that's just about right. It leads into the first song proper, which is Have You Ever Been to Electric Ladyland? And this one finds Jimi singing in a sweet falsetto, unlike so many of his recordings where he has a very talking kind of talk-singing delivery. This one, when it was played back to him, it said that he jumped up and down in the studio saying, I can sing, I can sing. and is clearly showing the influence of Curtis Mayfield in the Impressions or Smokey Robinson in the Miracles on this. And these sweet vocals are accompanied by guitars just cascading over one another, slowed down drums, and the excellent advice to make love, make love, make love. The album comes down to earth with the next track, which is Crosstown Traffic. Jimi Hendrix plays kazoo or Coleman wax paper. Dave Mason from Traffic is on backing vocals. There'll be a lot of Traffic involvement on the album. I believe Hendrix is also on the piano on this. He'd asked his engineer Eddie Kramer to play, and Kramer left it to Jimmy himself. This again is one of the earthy rock and roll numbers on the album, and it was released as a single. This is a German copy of the single Crosstown Traffic, along with the album track Gypsy Eyes, and that's on Polydor label. And here is a French edition. Same coupling of Crosstown Traffic and Gypsy Eyes. And this one is on the Barclay label. Side 1 concludes with the lengthy, jammed-out blues Voodoo Child. Amazing, heavily Muddy Waters-influenced piece, with Jimmy accompanied by Mitch Mitchell from The Experience, Jack Cassidy of Jefferson Airplane on bass, and more Traffic involvement, Steve Winwood on organ. There's crowd noise overdubbed to simulate a live in the studio or party atmosphere, including possibly the worst thing you could possibly say on a Jimi Hendrix session, when there's a squall of feedback and somebody says, "Turn that damn guitar down." Side 2 opens with Little Miss Strange, which is Noel Redding's contribution to the album, both as songwriter and singer. And I've never been a big fan of his contributions to the Jimi Hendrix Experience albums. This one is a bit more in keeping with his own band, Fat Mattress. Wouldn't have been out of place on the first Fat Mattress album at all. One interesting point about it is the way it abruptly shifts into waltz time at the end. This is followed by Long Hot Summer, and that's a song that very much captures the feeling of the title. Al Kooper guests on piano. Al Kooper from Blues Project and Blood, Sweat and Tears, and long solo career. Next track is Come On Part 1, and that's the last thing that was recorded for the album. It was a bit of a filler. They needed an extra track, so they recorded a cover of this track by the New Orleans guitarist Earl King, and did a great rocking job on it. So it's definitely, it was literally filler, but it definitely deserves its place in the album's playlist. And that's followed by Gypsy Eyes. As you saw earlier, that was released as the B-side of the single. Very beat-driven piece with they achieved a very strong kick drum sound that really drives this track. And Hendrix, what do I need to say about Hendrix's guitar work? Throughout the album, it just goes without saying, it's absolutely incendiary. And he does a nice effect of tracking his vocals with his guitar on this piece. And the second side concludes with the first track that was recorded for the album. Actually, it was released as a single long before the album came out, Burning of the Midnight Lamp. Beautiful, beautiful psychedelic piece, which opens with the extraordinarily wonderful combination of a harpsichord and a wah-wah guitar. Released as a single in France. Again, this is on the Barclay label. And the B-side is the non-album track, The Stars That Play with Laughing Sam's Dice. There's those initials, STP with LSD. Here is a German edition of the same coupling. For some reason they've placed the B-side title at the top. And another German single containing Burning of the Midnight Lamp as a B-side to Fire, which for some reason they've retitled Let Me Light Your Fire, even though there's nothing in the lyrics of that song about lighting your fire. And a notable contribution to the song is the backing vocals by the gospel group Sweet Inspirations. Then we come to side 3, and this is the water side. It begins with rain, Rainy Day, Dream Away, and this is performed by Hendrix and friends. The friends including Mike Finnegan on organ, Freddie Smith on saxophone, Larry Fawcett on congas, and his old buddy Buddy Miles on drums, who of course would later join Hendrix in the Band of Gypsies. This was actually a long jammed piece that was split in two for the album. So Rainy Day, Dream Away is the first half of the recording, and it segues into 1983, A Merman I Should Turn to Be. And this is just extraordinarily gorgeous. This is my all-time favorite Jimi Hendrix song. Hendrix paints lyrically a picture of a post-apocalyptic world from which he will retreat into the ocean and say goodbye forever to dry land. And from the lyrics section, it goes into an amazing picture of an undersea world created with Hendrix's own bass playing, heavily echoed guitar, amazing echo effects, very speeded percussion effects. Chris Wood, again from Traffic, on flute. And the connection between the alien world of the deep ocean and the alien worlds of outer space is very clearly made on this track, because he could be taking us to a whole other universe as he guides us through the ocean. And it concludes with Moon Turn the Tides, Gently, Gently Away, which is just a soft sound effect of the tides, the waves, and it kind of echoes the opening of the album, the sound painting of the heavens. This is a sound painting of the deeps. Side 4 continues the watery atmosphere with the second half of the Rainy Day Dream Away jam, now titled Still Raining, Still Dreaming, opening with a wonderful squall of wah-wah guitar that we had already heard as the first half faded out. Now we get to hear the verse that was slowly fading out in its natural form. And the pastoral atmosphere is completely shattered by the next track, House Burning Down. The lyrics were inspired by the Southern California race riots of the 60s, and there's also a science fiction aspect to it, which echoes the science fiction apocalypse of 1983. Very dramatic intro to this song, commentary on violence, rioting not being the way. Try to learn instead of burn. Hear what I say. And following this is the big hit single from the album, All Along the Watchtower, of course, a cover of the Bob Dylan song from the then brand new John Wesley Harding album. There is the German single with the B-side of Can You See Me? The sessions for recording Electric Ladyland were pretty fraught. Hendrix squabbled with Chaz Chandler. Hendrix squabbled a lot with Noel Redding, who walked out on the session. Dave Mason, who plays 12-string guitar on the track, again, continuing the Traffic contributions to the album, also played the bass originally, but Hendrix wiped that and played the bass himself. Brian Jones from the Rolling Stones is on percussion, most notably that vibra-slap sound, that do-do-do-do-do-do, that ksh sound is Brian Jones on the vibra-slap. And, of course, the amazingly dramatic and elastic guitar sounds that we all know from many radio plays of that song. Finally, the album goes back. Another reference to an earlier part of the album, but it concludes with Voodoo Child, Slight Return. And of course, this is based on the Voodoo Child song from side one, but this time tight and laser focused and heavy, whereas the other was rambling and earthy. This one is just blasting with Jimi Hendrix's most fiery guitar work and the classic wah-wah opening. Of course, played by the full Hendrix Experience trio lineup, which is certainly not true, as you've heard of much of the album. There are a couple of reissue versions of the album to show. This is the colored vinyl edition from Newbury Comics. It came on a marbled blue and white vinyl, sort of a sky-looking effect. And the version that was released by Barnes & Noble on purple vinyl. Not sure how well that purple shows up. It's a dark purple. Both of which come... hello. Won't come out. There it is. Both of which come with a booklet showing that green mist photo from the European edition of the album, as well as the would-be cover from Central Park. So that's it for Electric Ladyland. Thank you very much for watching. This is probably the last of the 50-year videos of the albums I've had since 1969. The only albums I have left that I still have my original copies from 1969 are a couple of Beatles albums, and what can I say about those that hasn't been said a million times on a million other YouTube videos? So, be well. Thank you again for watching. See you soon.